Picture me as a teenager, walking down a small town Creston sidewalk with my brother-in-law. He cranes his neck up at me. "Hey, Beanpole, if you stand sideways on that crack, you're gonna fall straight through." I shot up in grade 8. Suddenly, I was taller than even most of the boys. As the youngest of 6, I was taller than my 4 older sisters. Now, I came by it honestly. My granny, born in 1899, was just under 6 feet. In her normal school photos, she stood head and shoulders above her classmates, and she topped my grandfather by 4 inches. So I had a model's height, but most of my length was in my body, not my legs. This meant that the darts on my blouses, back when blouses still had darts, were 2 inches above my barely discernible bust, and the rise of pants was always too short. I wasn't a fan of the camel toe look long before I knew what that meant. So I went shopping with a girlfriend, and I bought a mini dress. It was 1969, and they were all the rage. Her mother choked out, "You can't wear that. That skirt barely covers your bottom." In today's world, that wouldn't even have merited an eye blink. But back then, that was my last shopping trip for a while. Luckily for me, I learned how to sew in home ec. Patterns were always a challenge. The ones my mom had merely shortened by folding, I needed to cut apart, add the extra inches, and tape it back together, somehow lining the whole thing back up. And fabric, I always needed extra fabric. I became an expert at laying out the pieces and using up every last square inch of material. I adored the red Fortrell pantsuit I sewed. Long enough in the arms, long enough in the legs, and I felt very grown up in my plaid stovepipe trousers. When I was 14, my aunt bought me a winter coat at the Tall Girl shop in Vancouver. Now, this was a beautiful coat if you like pasty beige and brown fur, and if you were a size 14 like the coat, instead of something less than a 10 like me. It was long enough, and I wore it for many a winter. It kept me warm, but I hated that coat. I know it was bought with good intentions, but I wasn't consulted, and it didn't fit. I didn't fit. By the time I was 15, I was 5'11". And yes, there are some great things about being tall. I could reach all the tallest shelves, and my girlfriend's brother used to call me a long, tall drink of water. But I was shy and self-conscious. And like my father before me, and he had earned his nickname of Buster, I was clumsy. And no, I didn't play on the basketball team. It was the only sport I was ever picked first for in gym. I can still hear my teammates calling, "Shoot it, shoot it." The ball wouldn't even reach the rim. Badminton, that was the sport for me. I could use my long reach there. But whapping a birdie around the court, bottle glasses, and academic smarts only added to my image, that of a true nerd. So, as I wasn't going to be a basketball player, I enrolled in medical laboratory technology at BCIT, a place where I could use my brains, and there might be more of a choice in boys. My discipline, however, was 95% female. The only tall guy in our class liked my 5-foot friend. Why do tall guys always want to date short girls? They must be afraid of heights. At least the majority of the student body was mostly male, and they welcomed us underage girls to BCIT pub nights. My friends were out on the floor, and I was holding down the table. A young man came up to me. "Would you like to dance?" I scrambled to my feet. "You're tall." Well, duh. At least I found the Tall Girl shop in New Westminster. I was in seventh heaven. I bought a denim blue cotton jumpsuit with wide plaza legs. No camel toes for me. I was going to wow them with this outfit. Then my girlfriend introduced me to her 6-foot high school friend. He was in the reserves and he asked me to the ball. I was going to the ball. Then somehow I didn't measure up and he took my roommate instead. It turned out really well for them. They later got married. But for me, it was just a reaffirmation that I was large, clumsy, and stood out like a sore thumb. In my 3rd year of training, I met my first husband at a Kelowna pub featuring a local band. We were out on the dance floor, but my brain was screaming, "He's too short, he's too short." Turned out he was wearing earth shoes. I don't know if you remember them, but the heel was an inch lower than the toe. So he met my minimum height requirements, and besides, he liked me, something I hadn't had too much experience with. For our wedding, I bought the only off-the-rack gown that swept the floor as long as I wore low slippers. My first job as a lab tech was in a small interior hospital. I loved my job, and it was a good fit for me. My size still got in the way, though. Back then, microscopes weren't very ergonomic. To work with a straight back, I needed to lower my chair to the max and then place a 3-inch reference book underneath the microscope. This sabotaged my coworkers a few times, though, when they dropped down into my chair, only to have the oculars zoom straight past their foreheads. It even got me a few times. You know, that last 2 inches when you're sitting down and you don't really know whether the chair is there or not. All through this time, I continued to sew for myself. Then in the 90s, the younger generation got taller. I could go shopping again. In the stores, I'd find myself drifting over to other tall ladies and striking up a conversation. "That top looks great. Where did you get it?" Or, "Have you tried French dressing jeans? They fit really well." Not only did I get good tips, but I found myself stretching up around other talls, like a flower opening to the sun. In contrast, when I see pictures of myself with my sisters, I tower over their petite feminine forms. As Sigourney Weaver said, being tall has a major impact. It takes courage to be as big as you are, to live up to it, and not be intimidated by all the tiny, graceful people. Single again, I attended a Halloween dance. I'm out on the dance floor, and a man's curly hair is tickling the underside of my chin. He's attempting to lead, but I'm the one with the bird's eye view. All he can see is my chest. It was time to go home. I had to work the next day. I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned. "Would you like to dance?" "Sure." We've been together for more than 20 years now, and around him, I feel feminine and even graceful at times. Is it a good thing that I need that outside validation? I do ask myself that, but I think we gain our strengths from where we can. And with his support, I have learned to love my body and accept myself. And while I'm still a work in progress, I'm proud to be a strong, tall woman.